So, welcome back to Third Age Reforged, and I know it's been a little while since my last video, longer than it normally is, but this week has been quite incredibly busy. It is, of course, in the thick of what would be assignment hand-in dates for most people, I imagine, so I'm sure you'll forgive me for missing a day or two in terms of uploading, but now I'm finally back in my comfortable space in terms of Third Age Reforged, I think, and that's just doing the replays. I'm not really very good at cinematic stuff, so I'm sure you've noticed. But we have a new scenario here, and this is from Froggy. As I said, I was doing his next, and he has tweaked it a little bit, so I have got an improved version now. Now, usually a map that's on sort of sand in the midday sun on this game sort of plays havoc with my settings, but I have managed to make it I've managed to make it acceptable, I think. You know, and hopefully that manages to hold over in the YouTube compression, but we'll see. Regardless, we'll go through the army compositions and we'll have a look at the map. Well, I think we'll have a look at the map now, obviously, and as you can see, it's kind of similar to one of the former Harad maps, where there's sort of some cliffs here, and the attackers have to cross over, and they have to get through two armies, and then finally attack this last army up here by going up through the hills. And there's a lot of terrain on this map. It's wide open in some places and very narrow in others, and of course you can see it's 52,000 frames long, so we're here for the long haul, it would seem. But yes, let's go through the army compositions, and first of all, we have the Isengard army led by Baconfish 302, and I'm sure that I could actually look at the army compositions in the actual game, because of course this is a scenario. So he has the Uruk-hai infantry here at the front. They're going to be forming the backbone of the Isengard assault, because of course you can't lead the way with pikemen because they'll just be shot, but the Uruk-hai infantry will stand up to the arrow fire a little bit better, and they will of course perform quite well against most of the heavy infantry of the defenders. This is a 3v3, and the Easterlings are on the defence, so the Uruk-hai infantry won't be too outclassed in terms of a mainline infantry fight most of the time against those factions. He has the Champions of the White Hand here, which is probably his general's unit based on what kind of unit it is. Let's see if we can see the general. I don't actually see him, interestingly enough, so this might just be a unit that he can use pretty freely, which is going to be useful. They're a very potent anti-cavalry force on the field, and he's got two Warg Riders to back them up with. So, in terms of trying to deal with enemy cavalry, which you can always expect from the Eastern Men factions, the Wargs are going to be pretty key here in trying to zone that out. And of course, he does have in behind them some Uruk-hai pikemen and some Uruk-hai crossbowmen ready to support the infantry. These guys are going to be very potent, provided they can get into range without being shot. That goes for the pikemen and the crossbows, really, but they do need to be careful of the Easterling arrows. Well, actually, Southron arrows, because it is Harad, but we'll get to them. These Uruk-hai raiders back here form the sort of fodder core of Baconfish's army. He's going to need to send these forward first in order to soak up some of that arrow fire, which is naturally going to be coming his way. The Uruk-hai raiders are honestly not a terrible lower tier unit for what they offer, but they won't win any fights. They will need to be backed up, but they can provide a nice sponge for some of your more important units, in particular stuff like the Nazkai bodyguard and the standard Nazkai. So the Nazkai bodyguard is surely where the general is. And yeah, there he is, you can see where the arrow is. But the Nazkai bodyguard, of course, they will do very well provided they are backed up. And the Nazkai are quite similar, although they have, I think, a higher charge value, I'm not sure. But the Nazkai bodyguard, of course, are much tougher, and they will be able to get more killing done over a longer period of time. And then he's got a couple more units of Uruk-hai infantry back here, so a pretty standard Isengard army, all things told. Now we move on to the creator of this scenario in Froggy, and he's playing as the Orcs of the Misty Mountains. He has some Blackback Mountain Berserkers here at the front, which is not often where you see them, but of course he does have to move into position first. These guys will be useful in the late game in particular. That's generally where you'll find them, and they will generally win you the game, provided they're used. Well, to be honest with you, against the Easterlings, the Blackback Mountain Berserkers won't be quite as good, simply because the armor values on these guys are not quite as high. But the Blackback Mountain Berserkers should still do a nice job in the late game. And we also have some of these Heavy Goblin Halberdiers again. Similar story here, they'll be pretty good at trying to form a buffer against the enemy cavalry. But other than that, the armoured units of the Southrons and the Nomads from Khand are lower. So the Halberds won't be able to perform quite as well as they otherwise would. But he has got a lot of Heavy Goblin infantry, which should do quite well. They're again, kind of like the Uruk-hai raiders, one of the better sort of lower tier units of infantry in my opinion, the Heavy Goblin infantry, simply because there are so many of them. They have decent armour values, and you know, they can take a hit better than some of the other Orc units like the Orc Marauders. More Halberdiers as well. Back here he's got some mounted Uruk archers, so he has got a ranged presence, a decent ranged presence at that. And then some more Mountain Uruk archers. But back here he's got some of his more elite units, I would assume. So he's got some Mountain Uruk pikes. These guys will be useful. Against Harad, they're going to be good at holding the line and keeping the Misty Mountains infantry together. He's also got some Mountain Uruk blades back here. The Mountain Uruk blades, of course, slightly better than the heavy Goblin infantry. They'll do a bit more damage. Then back here, of course, he's got the fearsome Blackwatch Legion pushing their way through lines. The Orc bodyguards as well. Then back here, a couple of units of Mountain Orc Berserkers and some Black Uruks of the mountains. Now, is this a 3v3 or is it a 4v3? Hang on a moment. No, it is a 4v3. Okay. I was wrong. I was going to say there's a lot of blue down here for just one faction. And of course we have Mordor, played by Maestro. And he's got some Morgul Chosen. A couple of units of Numenorian Shield Guard and some more Morgul Chosen. That's a very strong front line of spears there. He's also got them backed up by some slightly less strong archers in the shape of the Orc archers. But they will still perform their job. And then they've got some Orc Maulers backing them up as well for a bit of that AP damage. And then he's got a full complement of Uruks here, 5 units of them. Going to provide the numbers. And then back here we have the elites. We have the Olag Kai, the Sauron's Will, 2 units of Mounted Numenorian Shield Guard, and the Melkor's Chosen, a very strong mounted force. And of course the fearsome Temple Inquisitors. Now moving on to the final attacking army. I thought this was a 3v3, but it is in fact a 4v3, so that's good. We have Arcturus, and he's got the Temple Guard here as archers. And then over here, it's a bit bright here on the sand still, but it's better than it was at least. He's got some Morgul Chosen as well as some Uruk Halberdiers backing them up. He's got the lesser Balrog, so they will be very good as a battering ram, especially if they combine with the Olag Kai. It's a very fearsome force indeed. He's got more Morannon units, so I would assume his army is more based around these Morannon units and he'll have less elites. It is looking like that. So he's got a lot of Morannon Uruks. And that's pretty much it. The Temple Guard and the lesser Balrogs are his elites, and at the front, actually no, that's the defenders. So we'll move on to the defenders now, in fact. And we'll start off with Khand, and their deployment is very spread out, and I'm not sure if this is a rule or if this is just a mistake in the deployment, but it's Enks Fitz. I think I've shown him in a replay before, but it was a very long time ago. He's going to be playing as Khand, and he's got these Variag bowmen at the front trying to skirmish down the enemy as they advance. These guys are pretty good. They are AP and melee, I believe, and at range they're not quite as good as the Nerniag infantry, but in my opinion, in terms of cost effectiveness, these guys are better than the Nerniag infantry because they are 100 less, and honestly the differences between the two units are quite negligible. Then just in behind them he has, in my opinion, what makes Khand a very viable faction at the moment are these guys. Yes, the cavalry is what gives them their edge, but what sets them apart from other cavalry focused factions like Rohan is the Nurad Footmen. They are a very solid mainline infantry unit. They're AP, they've got very high defense values, they'll be able to soak up lower tier arrow fire. They have shield ball, all the good things, and it's something that Rohan really lack at the moment. But the Nurad Footmen do that job very well for Khand, and against the Mordor Morannon forces they should do very well for themselves, as long as they're not isolated too much. He's got another unit of Variag bowmen back here. His formation is very strange. I can only assume it's a rule. He's got a unit of Nurad Footmen over here, in addition to some nomadic axemen. These guys are a lower tier shock troop, similar to the Orc Maulers in many ways. So he needs to use these guys in conjunction with his more solid Nurad Footmen, and he'll have a very solid armor-piercing front line. More Variag bowmen, and then over here we have one of the 2 Khandish elite infantry units, the Brotherhood of the Sword. Better against low armoured targets, but even so they will still do a very good job against most of the Mordor infantry. The Temple Inquisitors will chew through them, but other than that Mordor might struggle a little bit. Lesser Balrogs will do quite well as well. And then he also has some Variag warriors, of course. Decent. I mean, these guys, I think, for 700, you would expect them to be a little bit better, but at the same time, Khand doesn't have much money to spend on its infantry anyway. So most of the time you will see these guys because they're simply the best that Khand has to offer. The Nurad Footmen, of course, you can only have so many before the cost increases, and there are a couple more of them back here. Moving up here, we have more Variag bowmen, so he's got a lot of Variags on display today. And then I believe the last vestiges of his army are over here. He's got some Variag warriors up here. And then he's got his cavalry in here, so he's got some Nurad cataphracts and 2 units of Variag cataphracts. So the Orcs won't be able to do a great deal about these cataphracts outside of the Melkor's Chosen and the Champions of the White Hand, to be honest with you, simply because they are so solid. The cataphracts can rip through lines, but of course their weakness is they are quite slow. So if you find yourself in a situation where your cavalry is starting to die quickly, the cataphracts will not be able to escape that trap. And then over here he has the final parts of his army. He's got another unit of Brotherhood of the Sword. He's got some Brotherhood of the Lance and some Brotherhood of the Axe. So all of his elites are back here. Now we shall move over to here, with WK playing as Harad. He likes playing as Harad most of the time. And we have some Southron Warband, some Southron Archers. He's going to be facing down the Isengard advance, as well as a bit of the Misty Mountains as well, so he's got a lot of heavy lifting to do. The Dismounted Serpent Guard will hold firm in the face of most of the lower tier Orc units, and the Muhad Tribesmen will do a very good job against the higher tier Orc units, provided they can throw their jabbies without being destroyed by arrow fire. But then the Orcs don't have a great deal of arrow fire on display today. Got a couple more units of Serpent Guard, some Mounted Serpent Guard as well. These guys do not have HP, but they are very quick, so if you can get some hit and run charges off, you can do quite well for yourself with them. And then moving up over to here, the final parts of his army, because most of his army is closer together than the Candish players. He's got some Southron Archers, he's got some Southron Pikemen, AP Pikes. I mean, these guys will do a lot of good work for you, provided they don't get shot, because they are weaker in terms of their armour than most of the other human factions' pikes. But arrows are always going to be a weakness to pikes. For the time being, Southron Pikemen are one of the unsung heroes of the game, in my opinion. Southron Pikemen can be used to devastating effect, particularly against a faction like the Dwarves. If you can get in behind the Dwarven lines while these guys keep them pinned from the front, you know, you're going to have a lot of success with Harad. We've also got some Dismounted Serpent Guard, and up here I'd assume some Serpent Bodyguards. Similar to the Serpent Guards, only these guys do have multiple HP, so you can use them much more freely. Very similar to the Mounted Battle-Ready Dunedain of Eriador. And then up here he's got some Trollmen. The Trollmen, of course, the real anchor to the Haradrim infantry line. Really the only thing they have that's super, super strong. And then up here we have more of WK's army, actually. So I've got some Southron Warband, if I just get my words out. And then up here I believe we have the final army, here in the top encampment, which I would assume is the last shrine. Or is that the shrine over there? Who knows? But we have Stewed Balrog playing as Harad as well, so he's got some Southron Archers, some Dismounted Serpent Guard, 2 units of them. He's got some Southron Warband as well, so a very similar army to WK, a lot of the Southron units. He's also got some Serpent Bodyguards, so if you can get them in gear and sort of move them down the hill straight away, they could have some success on this flank against the Isengard and Misty Mountains advance. More Southron Pikemen and Warband, and some Archers as well. A couple of units of Trollmen, which in the late game could be very strong indeed. Actually, he's got 4 units of Trollmen. So he's got a very solid centre to his infantry, which he might need in the late game, to be fair. And then a couple of units of Dismounted Serpent Guard, and that's looking like it. There could be some units of Hashari hidden here and there as well. It's hard to tell, but we shall find that out when the battle begins. But for now, back where we started, I'll just make a little cut because there will be... I've already watched ahead a little bit in this battle, and there is a little bit of time while people manoeuvre around. So yeah, I'll see you when the battle starts. So, in the Candish player's haste to retreat, it seems like he left some units behind, because these Nurad footmen are about to be recharged by a contingent of Moran on Uruks, but more worryingly, the lesser Balrogs and the Olag High are on their way forward, which does mean that this single unit of Nurad footmen is going to be almost completely wasted. They are forming at least a rearguard action to allow some of the Candish archers to escape, though, which could well be the more important unit, because they're going to need some of that range. Khand, in particular, with their very scattered formation, are going to struggle if the Mordor players sort of combine their forces and punch through. Particularly with how he's sort of isolated himself on several of these hills. He needs to leave himself a way out, otherwise he's just going to find himself completely overwhelmed by the numbers and the power that Mordor can bring to bear. I mean, lesser Balrogs and Olag High are not going to be taken down by units of Nurad footmen. They're a solid mainline unit. They're not going to be able to take down these huge monsters. Stuff like the Brotherhood of the Axe and Brotherhood of the Sword are going to be required for that, as well as some ranged fire to really spray them down. Some Numenorian Shadow Guard that were hidden have also come forward to help join the fight. So yeah, these Nurad footmen being utterly overwhelmed here. Not really a great deal of surprise there, but again, I'm assuming that there is a sort of rule that Khand have to deploy forward and then sort of work their way backwards. Otherwise, that was a very questionable deployment by, what's this player's name again? I'll call him Fitz because his name is awkward to pronounce. As we can see, that Mordor is actually sort of bypassing this unit as well, going around either side with some units of cavalry and some units of infantry, which is a good move. It means that they will be able to lay siege to the Candish defensive position even more quickly. Of course, you can just see these lesser Balrogs taking virtually no damage. These Nurad footmen wavering, unsurprisingly. So yeah, lesser Balrogs, they are a very expensive unit. Obviously in a scenario it doesn't matter, but if you're going to bring them in a 1v1 situation, let's say, where you have to pay for them, in the current patch Mordor do struggle a lot against particularly armor-piercing arrows, and the lesser Balrogs are no exception to that. They do have a lot of HP, and they are very strong once they get going. But in my opinion, at the moment, they're a little bit easy to focus down. Mordor have always been about their very high-tier units pulling their weight. But at the moment, the Temple Inquisitors seem to be the only ones that really do that. The Temple Guard at range seem to be a little bit lackluster, in my opinion, as well. I remember I spent their entire ammunition contingent firing into the front of a unit of Arnor Gate Guards. The Gate Guards do have HP, but they are pikes. You would expect a high-tier archer to massacre them. And they killed 3 with their entire stock of ammunition, which I found a little bit underwhelming. As you can see, we've got these Nurad footmen. They are now starting to retreat. Lots of these units of Nurad footmen that were sort of scattered. They're going to form up around this entrance here, because it does seem like this is the area that Khan needs to protect, otherwise Mordor is going to flood forwards. And they do need to deploy pretty far forwards, otherwise WK could find himself on the receiving end of some side charges from that very dangerous Mordor cavalry. The unit of Nurad Cataphracts has been moved over here, but the Cataphracts will struggle against the sheer amount of Mordor cavalry and trolls on display. You can actually see that these Mordor Moran-Orcs are charging forwards. They are in loose, but even so, this is going to go pretty badly for them. Clattering into the front there. Let's have a look how many kills that get. They've really scythed that unit down. The unit's almost been completely destroyed actually from the front, and that's the power of a heavy cavalry unit in the current patch, particularly heavily armed like the Cataphracts. It does actually look like they're having to form another rear guard with another unit of Nurad footmen, so things are going pretty poorly for Khan at the moment, to be honest with you. A lot of these units are being wasted, and now these Moran-Orcs that were almost completely battered by the Cataphracts are trying to surround these Nurad footmen, but to be honest, you know, trapping another unit of infantry is worth it. The defenders can't really afford many mistakes in this situation, and already I think the Khandish player has really dropped the ball a little bit, to be honest with you. See the Cataphracts, but if we look over here, we can see that the line battle has begun, and oh my word, that frame rate. It's good to be back doing big replays, I said. Oh my word, that is a disaster. But yes, we have Baconfish, who has moved forward onto WK's front line. The Serpent Guard and the Southron Warband holding fast against the Isengard advance. That's a good synergy. The Southron Warband are AP, but they do have low attack values. The Serpent Guard, very strong basic infantry unit. You can actually see over here, provided we can get through the lag. Oh my word, that is crunchy. We can see that Froggy is trying to move to the aid of his ally, but he is being blocked by a unit of mounted and dismounted Serpent Guard. However, the Warg Riders of Baconfish 302 have managed to catch the Serpent Bodyguard, but charging in with another unit of Serpent Guard. With this sheer amount of cavalry, and after, it was a weak charge, but it was still a charge nonetheless, these Wargs should start to drop. I can only apologise for the frame rate. Why does this always happen to me? And you can see that the Serpent Bodyguards doing a pretty good job against these Warg Riders, but unfortunately for them, they are now taking quite a lot of arrow fire from the hill over there. You can see that these Mountain Uruk archers have taken up a very nice position with which they can shoot down on the Haradrim line, and in particular against stuff like these Southron pikemen, they're going to get a lot of kills. WK is managing to cycle his Serpent Guard in and out, and these Warg Riders are going to take some more charge damage there. As you can see, these Serpent Guard as well. They've actually managed to catch the Champions of the White Hand in melee with infantry, which is going to be pretty bad.
Very much in our favour. Victory will be ours.
At least for the Champions of the White Hand, they need to steer clear of these Muhad tribesmen, otherwise they're going to take some very hefty losses. And that's a unit they can't really afford to lose on this flank, otherwise the Serpent Guard will run roughshod all over the advancing infantry. Oof. This frame rate though, I'm beginning to think it's actually my recording software, because it wasn't this bad when I tested it out earlier. Nonetheless, we have the Uruk-hai Raiders. And the Uruk-hai Raiders will do pretty badly against the Serpent Guard, to be honest with you. The Uruk-hai Infantry, on the other hand, will do quite well. I think 1-to-1 they would actually win against the Serpent Guard as well. However, the presence of these spearmen in here as well does mean that the Haradrim line will hold. It means it's going to be relatively strong. It's also a very thick front line. So Isengard is going to struggle to get through here, and you can actually see here in the middle, they've taken a lot of damage, and that's because the Trollmen are here. So you can see that where the Trollmen are, a huge amount of damage has been done to the Isengard front line, and this does mean that the middle of their line is going to buckle, which would allow Harad to spread through the ranks like so. However, the Nazkai bodyguard are moving forward, and they are needed actually. The Trollmen are a high priority target, probably the highest priority target, so you may as well use your strongest units on them. However, if we look just over here, we can see that Khand have come to the aid of their ally. Sensing a bit of weakness over here, they've sent forward both their units of Veriad Cataphracts, which is a bold play considering the Mordor cavalry. As you can see, the Veriad Cataphracts charging into a softer part of the line, avoiding the pikes and spears of the Misty Mountains, going for the Mountainuric blades, getting a decent side charge on them there, cutting their numbers down a little bit. And again, there is only a very thin line of Southron pikemen holding back the Misty Mountains reinforcements, so perhaps it is for the best. You can actually see over here that these Veriad Cataphracts trying to charge into the side of the line. Not really a huge amount, but they have managed to break some of these Uruk-hai raiders, which does mean that the Isengard front line, of course, is starting to struggle just a little bit. These Warg Riders charging forward into the front lines. And again, the Warg Riders are really not at home when they're fighting infantry, particularly heavily armoured infantry, especially when they're under javelin fire. The Wargs really need to be kept in reserve and kept to keep the defenders' cavalry at bay. I mean, they should really be trying to chase off the Veriad Cataphracts at this point, because if they don't, then the reinforcements he would have received from the Misty Mountains are just going to be stonewalled. You can actually see that the Mountain Orc Berserkers are trying to come forward, use their big axes in melee against the Cataphracts. They do have a bonus versus cavalry, but in a similar vein to Trolls, Axemen are only good against cavalry and sustained melee. After taking a charge, they will take significant losses, and as you can see, this one poor unit of Mountainuric Blades has been completely flattened by, I think that's the third charge they've taken. And the unit wasn't even spread out, that was a thin charge. The Cataphracts, they're going to be a real problem. Those Muhad Tribesmen are out of ammunition, but they are now able to back up that very thin unit of Southron pikemen in melee, so it's not all bad. However, as you can see, some of these Veriad Cataphracts getting involved in this pike fight, that's really not where they want to be. One of the few things that can kill heavy cavalry pretty quickly is a decent unit of pikes, and the Mountainuric pikes are pretty good. And they are also now in a bit of a sustained fight with the Mountain Orc Berserkers, so that's very unfortunate for them. Keeping an eye on the mini-map over there to make sure I don't miss anything on the other front. Some Southron archers moving forward, presumably they are out of ammunition. You can actually see that the Nurad Cataphracts are also coming over here as well, so Khand is going all in with the cavalry over here. Sensing that perhaps he can't beat the Mordor cavalry outright to make it worth it using his cav over there, he's moved them over here, which I can see why. Now we can see these Veriad Cataphracts. They're going to be moving forward. Oof. Poor camera control by me there. And the Mountain Orc Berserkers taking another charge. They are actually shaken and they're wavering.
Only half the enemy force remains.
Will they break? Doesn't look like it actually. And now these Black Uruks are moving forward. Again, to be fair to the defenders, they do need to use this cavalry well, because their infantry cannot stand up to the sheer quality that some of the Orc armies have. In particular that one Mordor army that's got just a ton of elites. And you can see that burrowing into this line are the already pretty damaged unit of Nurad Cataphracts. Also the Blackback Berserkers are over here, so these Cataphracts need to be recycled pretty quickly, otherwise they're just going to die off in melee. You can see that the Halberdiers, honestly, they can take a charge better from the front than most units, but they're still not pikemen. You can still buckle them with a charge if the unit is healthy enough. It looks like this unit of Cataphracts is just going to be kept in there. Again, I'm not sure why. Now they're being recycled, but unfortunately for them, they've already taken some pretty severe losses. The Southern Archers in their position. What are they going for, I wonder? What they should be going for is the Blackback Berserkers, absolutely. They've got a lack of armour. Doing some HP damage to them is absolutely worth it, because in terms of Misty Mountains units, they are easily the biggest threat. They're actually going for the Black Uruks, which is, again, not a bad choice. And also the Veriad Cataphracts charging into these Black Uruks. Going to cause a lot of damage there. In addition to the arrows flying in. So yeah, the Khandish cavalry is definitely being used to good effect. Actually, let's see what Mordor is doing to take advantage of this. Seems like Mordor is just sort of moving up. As you can see, there are actually several ways they can go about this. They can go directly up to the shrine itself by going this way, or they can go through the encampment down here and try and surround WK using that road. Khand is very thin over here though. I'm surprised that Mordor is not being way more aggressive. They've got a huge army. and they could punch through this very limited force of Khand pretty easily, in my opinion. I mean, Nomadic Axemen, there's some Brotherhood of the Sword, but 2 units of Nurad Footmen is not going to hold back that army. So I'm surprised that, unless Mordor are not allowed to be aggressive, of course. I'll probably post the rules if I can find them on the Discord in the description below. I should educate myself better, shouldn't I? But here we have the Blackwatch Legion forming up a nice front line. Finally, it looks like it's beginning to look like the Misty Mountains are going to be able to secure their position and come to the aid of their ally. But at what cost? If we look over here, we can see that where there was a nice thick line battle, there is now very scattered pockets of fighting. It does look like Isengard have ultimately come out on top of this fight though. Although to be fair, the Variag Cataphracts are now coming in and that might change. That's not a good charge though for the Variag Cataphracts. They need to get out of there very quickly because it's Uruk-hai pikemen. They should definitely be leaving the pikes to the Haradrim archers. It says defeat is a possibility, but you don't want to be wasting your cavalry like this. Meanwhile, if we look back here, Variag Cataphracts going after the crossbows, that is a very good target indeed. You can actually see over here, there is another route that goes up and around. Can you get down from here? Ooh. Not sure if you can get down from here. Would be interesting, but you can also set your crossbows up over there. There's a lot of like sort of hidden routes and roads on this map. I do like it. It's a very good first scenario that's been made by Froggy, I have to say. Again, he's charging both his units of, not Froggy, but the Khandish player is charging both of his units of Variag Cataphracts into pikemen, which doesn't seem like the best idea to me, but I'm not playing. So we can see here that this last unit of Muhar tribesmen sort of forming a rearguard action, slowly but surely being bled out by these Mountain Uruk archers and these Blackwatch legionnaires. These Southron archers are sort of getting into position, taking the aggressive stance. You can actually see over here as well the last vestiges of these Nurad Cataphracts. In melee with these Black Uruks and these Uruk-hai infantrymen, there's also these 17 dismounted Serpent Guard, which again, the Serpent Guard have held. Although to be fair, both of these lines have ground themselves up against one another, so Isengard will not have a great deal of infantry left, but then again neither will WK's Harad. You can actually see these Mountain Orc Berserkers coming in, trying to get into these Southern archers in melee. They were successful with this, but the Serpent Bodyguard trying to help them out. Only 9 of them left though. Presumably that's WK's general as well. But now we shall move back over to the other front. As we can see, the front line has been met, and again, I'm questioning the method behind the Khandish player's construction of his lines. He seems to be sending in individual units of Nurad footmen to try and hold back the entire Mordor army, and that's not going to work. They're just going to be overwhelmed. Again, you know, these Númenórean shield guard are going to be more than able to stand up to the punishment that the Nurad footmen can dish out, and then he's got also Orc Maulers trying to sort of filter in around the flank, and as soon as they get surrounded, the Nurad footmen are going to fall apart pretty quickly. There's a lot of arrow fire coming in from the Variag bowmen, but it's not going to be enough. The Mordor forces are simply too great in number. It's going to be very, very challenging, I think, for the defenders to come back from these individual little mistakes. Again, it might be part of the rules, but I don't think that part of the rules would be for Khand you can only engage one unit at a time. That would be very strange. Meanwhile, these Variag warriors getting into melee with these Orc Maulers. Amazingly, they're losing 1-1. Variag warriors, one of the more lackluster units, but then they are being targeted by arrows. As soon as the arrow fire lets up, they do start to win against the Orc Maulers, but again, just the fact that the Mordor players are able to sort of get in and around the flanks is bad news for them. These Nurad footmen are going to find themselves overwhelmed. These ones over here are having to fight Olag-hai. Again, the Olag-hai are looking very fresh as well. Brotherhood of the Sword are being sent in, as well as some Nomadic Axemen, but again, I think it's a bit too late. I think the way that these lines have been constructed is too flimsy. He's already lost too many men. And it's going to be up, I think, to Baconfish right at the top with his elite Harad army to do most of the work on this front, I must say. Again, these Nurad footmen defeat is a distinct possibility. The Brotherhood of the Sword are coming in though. Definitely one of the cooler looking units, wielding their dual scimitars. These Nomadic Axemen need to not just stand there because they're taking arrow fire, and they are terrible when they're under arrow fire. You can see they're melting before what is presumably just Orc archers And indeed it is. You can actually see that some of these Númenórean Shield Guard are able to push their way through the middle of the line. These Nomadic Axemen need to shut the door on them. Looks like that is what they are going to do. Going to charge in. Nomadic Axemen, of course, a lower tier unit, but they will at least hold back the tide. So we just move forward. The Morgul chosen in the Númenórean Shield Guard, 2 multiple HP spear units. They're not going to be easy to get rid of. They have taken casualties to the Nurad footman, but ultimately I would have to say that stuff like this flanking from the Orc Maulers, these Variag warriors have taken some losses. Again, I'm surprised. If Mordor had been more aggressive, they would have smashed through this line a lot more quickly. So Moran on Uruks are moving forward. Again, these Orc Maulers on the front line. The Olag High have moved forward. And actually now they're getting into the Brotherhood of the Sword, and the Olag High will be pretty decent against the Brotherhood of the Sword. Their high armour values will help them here. The Brotherhood of the Axe would be much more dangerous to them. You can actually see as well, the Halberdiers have moved forward, the Uruk Halberds. And again, they're just being overwhelmed, and this is the problem. The Brotherhood of the Sword are a good unit that were basically sent to their doom. Most unfortunate for the Khandish player, but again, I think it's just not a good way of structuring your defence. You can't layer it like that. You need to commit to individual sections, and you need to hold them. You can't just send forward 1 or 2 units and expect them to hold back the entire army cost effectively. These Brotherhood of the Sword are pursuing something, weirdly enough. They're pursuing those Orc Maulers. I mean, those Brotherhood of the Sword, they really need to get out of here at this point. Enough of them have died in defence of this lost cause. Orc Maulers are pushing through the line. It's been a real disaster on this front for the defenders. You see the Olag High, victory seems certain, still going strong. The Lesser Balrogs are moving up. It's exactly the sort of thing that the Khandish defenders did not want to see coming. The Nurad footmen have held much better on this front, but of course the trolls are not over there. The Lesser Balrogs are on their way now. The Variag warriors may have finally joined the fray at the front line after defeating that Orc Mauler flank. But things are not going to go well with the Lesser Balrogs on their way. Oh, that is WK's general, I believe, so we should go and hop over there as soon as we see the Lesser Balrogs. Actually, I think they're just going to move through the line. Or are they just going to park themselves on these? Well, no matter. Let's head back over to here, and we can see these Southern archers that still have ammunition are being engaged by these mountain Uruk blades, so things are going pretty well for the attackers on most fronts, I think, at this point. Maestro, with his mounted Númenórean Shield Guard, managed to assassinate WK's general. Again, the Mordor cavalry being sent over here as well, interesting. I get the feeling that he could have swept Khand aside if he frontally charged Khand without their cav cover. Actually, we can see that there are some... I think these are all Southern archers, actually. I don't think there's any spears in here. Some of the Númenórean Shield Guard have been wrapped up, though. A few individual units of Warband do lurk within this unit. Again, it's only really Southern archers that he's got holding the line at this point. And finally, it looks like Baconfish. Actually, no, it wasn't. It's Stewed Balrog at the top, isn't it? I thought he was playing the 2nd Harad army. See, these Southern archers are not going to be too much of a match for professional infantry units. The Mountain Uruk archers, not really the sort of thing that will cause too much of a problem in the numbers that they've been committed. But of course, moving up the hill, we can see some Uruk high infantry. Dedicated heavy infantry will easily beat Southern archers in melee, of course. But again, they have actually managed to sort of deal with the Mountain Uruk blades that were accosting them here. So the Southern archers able to get a few more shots off. I assume they're going for the crossbowmen, which is a very good target. Taking care of some of that stopping power in the late game is going to be pretty key. As you can see, advancing up in these sort of narrow columns, which is not really what you want. You want to be sort of spreading out a little bit more, but ultimately it's not going to matter too much. Defeat seems certain. Defeat is almost a certainty. What is this sorcery? What sort of Southern archers are these? Regardless, as soon as they spread out and as soon as they get more of their men into the fight, these Uruk-hai infantry should be more than enough to deal with these Southern archers. Now though, if we move back over to here, we can see that the misery of Khand continues. Their bowmen are being slaughtered by the Balrogs. And then over here, yeah, the front line has just been completely crushed as soon as Mordor came forward in full force. Not even full force, half force really. You can see that they still have a load of men all the way back down there. Yeah, Khand has been swept aside with relative ease, it must be said. You can see there are still some Brotherhood of the Sword fighting the good fight over here against these halberdiers. But ultimately they will be overwhelmed as well. And it's going to be bad times for them. Let's have a look here. So he's still got some Olag High. Both units of Olag High actually. I think they've got 2 units because they have 1 unit of 10 Olag High. I swear there was 1 unit with 9 in it a minute ago, unless they all died. I find that hard to believe though.
The battle is very much in our favour. Victory will be ours.
Yeah, I would definitely be coming down in favour of the attackers at this point in time. You can see these Mordor Moran on Uruks moving forwards. Dealing with these Variag bows. Now what's over here? Again, I really question the wisdom of structuring your lines like this. Because again, 1 unit of Brotherhood of the Axe is not going to be able to hold back all of this. You need to support them. The Brotherhood of the Axe are a fantastic shock unit, but they're not going to be able to do the job that they've been given here. You can see these Variag bows firing their missiles. Still Olag High, that's a lot of Uruks. A lot of Uruks. Mordor haven't really had to expend a lot of their fodder moving up this hill so far. Meanwhile, the lesser Balrogs have actually started to take some casualties now under the arrow fire from the Variag bowmen. So finally the scary monsters are starting to drop, but ultimately, again, they've still got a lot of multiple HP spears. They've got a lot of Uruks, a lot of Morannon units, and of course they still have the Temple Inquisitors and the Melkor's Chosen. Nonetheless, getting through that top army, Stuart Balrog does have a very strong professional army. At this point I would just fall them back. There's no sense in leaving your units down here just to die. Although it does actually look like, based on the movement on the mini-map, things are progressing. But again, these Brotherhood of the Axe are just sort of moving forth into the arrow store, as well as these Variag bowmen. What are these guys doing? How strange. Well, what's going on over here? And that Stuart Balrog is actually moving his army downhill. It would be a bold move to try and engage the Misty Mountains and Isengard, but it's also more likely that they would be able to destroy their armies entirely. Mordor still has a lot left in reserve after all. Stuart Balrog is moving up the hill with some of his Southron pikemen. WK's army is largely all gone. I'm struggling to see if he's got anything left actually. So he's got some, well, there's some Brotherhood of the Lance from the Khandish player over here. Some Trollman. Khand is sort of pulling back what he can. Also got some Southron Warband, but I don't know. I'm not liking the odds of the Haradrim forces here. I do hope that I've used the right one. That's a lot of Trollman though. That's a lot of Trollman. I think that they would actually be able to destroy the advancing forces. If we look back over here though, again, a real disaster. It's not been a good showing for the Khand player, bless him. He just hasn't done a very good job at organising his defence at all, and this has led to his forces being swept aside with relative ease, unfortunately. So we shall see how this battle goes. If it does indeed turn out to be close, this could have been one that the defenders could have ended up winning if Khand had managed to sort of get his ducks in a row with more consistency. As you can see, Mordor, the Juggernaut, just marches forward. I think they are actually... There's another road up here. Ah, so you can go right the way around, can you? Interesting. There is indeed a lot of roads and a lot of pathways that you can take in this fight. I do quite like that. What's going on over here? Well, Stuart Balrog sending forward some of his Southron archers to rain some death down upon the advancing Isengard and Misty Mountains forces. What's going on over here? There's another little cliffside here that the Uruk-hai crossbows are trying to sort of take shelter from the advancing Southron archers. This is very steep. You could slide off the hill to your doom. are these guys going to start firing? Pick your targets. There's still a long way in this battle to go, which surprises me based on the amount of forces that are still around. So as you can see, the attackers are actually 10% ahead, which is nuts. Usually in this sort of situation, even if the defenders were 10% ahead, I'd be thinking they were kind of doomed. But we shall see. We shall see. In fact, it looks like things have sort of ground to a bit of a halt for the time being, although the Southern Archers are now finally starting to... Are they? It says they're reloading, but the animation hasn't started yet. Come on, guys. Give me something to work with here. No? Well, screw you too, then. So I'm just wondering how the attackers are going to go about this. I mean, if I was Isengard in the Misty Mountains, I would just wait. I mean, there's no need to rush. Mordor's forces are in rude health, and they are just going to be able to sort of move around, and then you can surround and crush Harad at your leisure. But it remains to be seen what actually happens. I think I will actually make a small cut here, because it doesn't look like much is actually happening at this point, and there is a long way in this battle to go, so I'm wondering if there's a long period of manoeuvring where the Misty Mountains and Isengard do indeed wait for Mordor to get their armies in position, which would take about 10,000 frames at this rate. So, I shall meet you when the battle begins in earnest once more. So, taking the initiative somewhat, a little bit sooner than I expected, Stewed Balrog is coming downhill with his serpent bodyguards, although unfortunately he has found himself caught on Baconfish's Nazkai. So he does need to get out of here relatively sharpish, otherwise he's going to take some enormous losses at the hands of those very nasty barbed swords. But yeah, this is an interesting point. So it does look like Isengard and the Misty Mountains do intend to advance up and around here, as well as straight up the hill into the defensive position of Harad. Mostly it is just Stewed Balrog left. I mean, WK might have a few individual units still alive, and there might be, well, there is a few of Khan's units still alive, so Fitz still has a couple of things. He's moving his force into position. I think that there is, I mean, look at this. This is what I would be most concerned with if I was the defenders at this point in time. I mean, just look at the column of death that is coming their way. I mean, most of these are actually lower tier Orc Archers and Uruks, but it's the numbers that they have to deal with, and they're going to have to cover all of these angles. And there is, of course, still those elites. I would still place the advantage firmly in the defenders' court. There is a unit up here, apparently, for the defenders. That was just a unit of 5 routing Southern Archers, but the Balrogs and the Olakai sort of sweeping around. Presumably they're looking for hidden units, which is a good tactic. You can see that Mordor is also advancing along this way, so the noose is tightening. Harad have chosen their hill they intend to die on. But again, I think I was a little bit premature in coming back to this fight, because again, it does look like a lot of these cav charges are just going to be feints and not really going to be doing much of anything. So I will make another cut here. Again, just a little update on what's actually happening in the battle. These Southern Archers are firing their missiles, presumably. Finally. Firing down onto the Isengard. Well, actually, no, that's a Misty Mountains position. But yes, we shall wait until the fight begins. It would appear that my nightmare of only making small cuts continues, as Harad, Stewed Balrog, is actually taking the aggressive approach and is charging downhill into the kind of lightly manned position of Isengard and the Misty Mountains here. I mean, there are Uruk-hai infantry and halberds, but they've already seen combat. Admittedly, these are only Southron Warband and dismounted Serpent Guard. If these were Trollmen, this position would be ripped apart pretty quickly, but he doesn't want to send his Trollmen into the crossbow fire, I understand that. Southron Warband, though, with that AP, Serpent Guard with their decent defense stats, they should be able to clean this front line up, but again, I would worry for the fate of the defenders. I think that things have already conspired against them somewhat. What's going on up here? As you see some Hashari shadows and a lot of Trollmen, as well as more Serpent Guard. Again, Hashari shadows are going to be a very effective long-range skirmish force. They're also going to be very good in melee. I think they have the exact same melee stats as the regular Hashari. The only difference between the two is the shadows have bows, and for only 100 more as well. It's a little interesting fact. I do think WK's entire army is gone though. The Orcs would hate fighting in a place like this in lore. I know that they do very poorly in the sunlight. And this is, of course, the sun shines warmly, always. You can see the Southron Pikemen are actually being used as the flanking unit, interestingly enough. So what are they going to do? Are they going to try and hold back these Blackwatch Legion from reinforcing their front line? That would be an interesting move indeed. Would leave themselves very open to sort of rear shots from those crossbows, and the crossbows are targeting the pikes at this point.
Victory will be ours.
Having said that, without the support of these Blackwatch Legion, this front line is going to crumble. I mean, these Southern Warband, as well as the dismounted Serpent Guard, are doing a very good job at dealing with these haggard units. What are these pikes actually intending to do? They weren't able to get into formation, which is very unfortunate for them. These guys have actually just sort of been sent forward into the meat grinder. It's unfortunate for them, but again, the Uruk-hai crossbows are such a powerful unit in the game at the moment, and Harad pushing their way through the line. Trollmen as well. This aggression, though. Again, they have fallen even further behind, though. Things are looking pretty bleak, I have to say. Can't see how this is going to be a close fight, to be honest with you, but we'll see. Stu Balrog sending forward his Serpent bodyguards, presumably to try and get in and around behind the lines. This Blackwatch Legion unit, both of them, in hot pursuit of the pikemen, and of course the crossbows, as they are wont to do, scurry away. Let's head back up to the top of the hill over here. And once again, I mean, this is a very bold move by Stu Balrog, and if this fight does end up being close, even if he doesn't win, I mean, this looks like it's going to pay off. I mean, a lot of these Trollmen and Serpent Guard, they're going to be able to hack their way through Heavy Goblin Infantry and Mountain Uruk Blades. Is there an elite unit up here to anchor this line? No. Where are the Nazkai Bodyguard? I thought they were up here somewhere. Ah, here they are. So the Nazkai Bodyguard might be enough to turn this fight around, but they're not going to be committed until the Trollmen have taken a little bit more HP damage, which I understand. You don't really want to be going into a fight against the Trollmen when you are underprepared. They have 3 HP, of course. Meanwhile, this line over here has turned into a bit of a mess. I have to say, I'm still not entirely happy with the brightness settings. The graphics look really good on any map that isn't sand at midday. Well, sand during the day. Sunset sand looks great, but this sand, not great. So I still need to do some fiddling around with that. Unfortunately over here, the Blackback Mountain Berserkers, defeat is almost a certainty because they are taking skirmish fire and they are in melee against a very strong unit. But they are going to be dealing some damage of their own, and the Trollmen are not going to be able to hold out for too long, you would have to say. But the Southern Archers, again, the Blackwatch Legion, I don't see how this is going to be close at all, but there's still so much of the battle left. I'm very confused. Is there like an entire army for the defenders that I've completely missed? See these Serpent Guard again. Defeat is starting to look certain for some parts of the line here for Harad, the parts that are fighting the Blackwatch Legion and the Blackback Berserkers mainly. You can see again that the Orc bodyguards have also been committed forward, so Froggy has sent forward all of his elite units, and it looks like this front line is going to completely crack under the pressure. Let's have a look over here, shall we? As we move in, these Trollmen and their barbed tribal swords managed to crush their way through this line. And what I can only assume happens if this is going to end up being close is this front line is going to be completely overwhelmed, and this whole force is going to be able to flank around and destroy the Misty Mountains and Isengard from the rear, and then the rest of the force goes to try and fight what remains of Mordor. But I still think Mordor have a bit too much.
If we continue like
Ashari
this,
shadows.
smash the enemy.
Yeah. Victory is almost a certainty for these Serpent Guard, and they're fighting Nazkai. But the Nazkai victory also seems certain. More Serpent Guard perhaps is the answer. The Serpent Bodyguards are still over here. The Brotherhood of the Lance is still alive. Completely unused. These Nazkai Bodyguard, they are very tired. They have had to hold the Isengard line together on more than one occasion. And it does look like this is going to be one time too many. The Serpent Guard, again, not a fully elite unit, but they're going to be able to overwhelm here. And this Heavy Goblin Infantry is wavering. This is a big unit to break as well if this Brotherhood of the Lance is able to do it. They're trying to push their way through. And they're broken. So this is a big win up here for the defenders. They need to surround and finish off this Nazkai They also need to use this Brotherhood of the Lance and the Serpent Bodyguards to save what remains of their front line down here. Because down here is where things are starting to get desperate. The Trollmen are starting to fall apart, although having said that, from nowhere, the Hashari come forth to help hold the line together. What's going on up here? You can actually see that the advance of Mordor has begun. The Variag Bowmen going to be the ones to try and hold back the tide, as well as some Variag warriors. There's also some Brotherhood of the Sword. So again, Khand is still doing this, we're going to leave one unit behind sort of defensive ploy, but at this point they don't have much choice. Khand actually do have some Nurad assassins as well. But again, they're having to just sort of retreat and scurry to the aid of their ally. As we can see, down here, the cavalry slamming into the backs of those Uruk-hai crossbows. And the Brotherhood of the Lands have got a brutal charge. Again, relatively speaking, for cavalry with hit points, they are actually kind of flimsy. But off the charge, they're so devastating. And now this other unit of Uruk-hai crossbows is being engaged by the Serpent Bodyguard. So, amazingly, the defenders should be able to wrap up Isengard and the Misty Mountains. But I still think Mordor have just too much men. Too much men, too many men. It has been a long week and I'm very tired. Yeah, these Serpent Bodyguards doing very well for themselves. Going to easily defeat these Uruk-hai crossbows in melee. These Brotherhood of the Lance have just flattened that unit. And now the Brotherhood of the Lance, if they get some rear charges on some of those lower tier units like the Heavy Goblin Halberd, the Misty Mountains line will start to fall apart. And also these Hashari shadows looming, coming to the aid of their Hashari brethren in that front line. You can see the Blackwatch Legion from here. Again, they are right to try and finish off these crossbows, because even a small unit of 12 crossbows can do a lot of damage over a period of time. Interestingly enough, Mordor is now cresting the hill over here. This fight has turned into quite an interesting sort of use of all the little hidden side paths. I do like how Stu Balrog was very aggressive here. Oh, and those are demons of the desert. His army's just a toy chest of hidden strong units. That was the Misty Mountains general, I think. I mean, these demons of the desert will probably need to turn around and get ready to face the oncoming Mordor forces. These Southron archers that are out of ammunition just being used to sort of block the Mordor advance for now. And that's kind of what Mordor have had to deal with most of this time. They've just had to deal with small forces that are just there to sort of hold them back for a little while. But soon they will have to face some elites. The Brotherhood of the Lance getting kind of a weak charge into the back of those Blackback Berserkers. Serpent Bodyguards finishing up whatever was down there. Again, it's timely as well that these units should come here now. Again, these Hashari Shadows are going to easily finish off Heavy Goblin Halberdiers. Serpent Bodyguards. Again, not the best charge, but they're still going to do a bit of extra damage to these Blackback Mountain Berserkers. Now the Brotherhood of the Lance also coming in. That's going to be the end of the Misty Mountains and Isengard attack, pretty much. But again, Mordor is looming large, and Mordor have actually sort of taken the top parts of the map, and they are actually going to be able to shoot down with some of these Númenórean Shadow Guard. And again, the Orc Archers could be devastating against those Hashari, because the Hashari are absolutely going to be a very important part of the army at this point. The Númenórean Shadow Guard, however, the Nurad Assassins have been committed. Nurad Assassin with their rice farmer hats. I don't know what these are actually called. You can see using their blades. They're going to be in melee, and the Nurad Assassins are not going to be something that just any old unit can beat. The Uruks will fall pretty quickly to the Nurad Assassins, and they are also being backed up by a unit of Variag Bows. So this is a rear guard which should last for quite some time, unless a unit of genuine quality from Mordor is sent forward. But it doesn't look like there is much genuine quality up here in the very top level, and unless you look right at the back where the Melkor's Chosen are. The Melkor's Chosen might be a bridge too far for the defenders at this point. There's not really much they have which can deal with them. Again, these Brotherhood of the Lance. This part of the line has been crushed, quite spectacularly. Demons of the Desert are ready. The Demons of the Desert would be good against the Melkor's Chosen. As we can see, the fight with Mordor has begun in earnest. Are the Nazkai still alive up here? I think they are. Yes, they are. There's still 5 Nazkai bodyguards. And look at all these men they're holding up. There's another unit of Hashari Shadows. There's a unit of Brotherhood of the Sword. There's some Variag Bowmen. Some Variag Warriors. More importantly, there's a unit of Trollmen up here. Which I think these units up here should honestly just turn around and get ready to face Mordor here on the highest level. Simply because if you give Mordor the high ground, as well as the numbers advantage, things are looking pretty bleak. Things are already looking bleak, but even bleaker. We all know that the high ground is OP. There goes the Isengard General at the hands of a Variag Warrior. Here we have the Trollmen. The centre of the Isengard line. Still some Blackwatch Legion alive in here. I'm surprised how well a lot of these Southron units are doing. Particularly the Southron Archers. Are now being backed up by Hashari Shadows. And again, a heavily armoured, sort of defensive focused spear unit is not going to have a lot of chance against Hashari in melee. The Hashari are almost a hard counter to a unit like this. And with the numbers of the Southern Archers to back them up, not good for the Morgul Chosen. Those Olag High were very quickly destroyed by something, I would assume the Demons of the Desert. Yeah, this cavalry could well prove to be quite the game changer, but I would still assume that the Melkor's Chosen would be able to deal with them pretty easily if they were able to catch them, of course. The Serpent Bodyguards and the Brotherhood of the Lance are very quick. The Numenorean Shield Guard trying to get away, but it's a little bit too late at this point. Trollmen of Harad, victory seems certain. Or a rear charge. Not the best rear charge, but you know, they're there. The Brotherhood of the Lance have certainly contributed to this fight in a big way. There's Serpent Bodyguards moving away from that area of the fight. Oh, the Temple Guard. What are they going after? I mean, they should absolutely be going for the Hashari. What do we got here? Brotherhood of the Lance. Numenorean Shield Guard. I'm going to try and get a screenshot of this. Who knows if that will be the thumbnail. But yeah, this Numenorean Shield Guard. The Brotherhood of the Lance do need to be careful. They can't be used clumsily at this point. There's a lot of dead Brotherhood of the Lance, and indeed, the target of the Temple Guard is the Brotherhood of the Lance. And without shields... Although these Serpent Bodyguards have managed to wriggle their way through. I mean, this is going to be where they die at this point. Which, it's questionable whether this is going to be worth it. And it wasn't the best of charges, to be honest with you. I mean, the Temple Guard, they've got HP, so they're a rock. I mean, they got 1 kill. Definitely not worth it. And now they're trapped. This is it. They tried to stop the arrow storm, but in the end, it's going to cause the death of their bodyguard unit. In the end, that was a bit of a disaster, and that might be the final nail in the coffin. To be fair, 27 of them left. Yeah, I think the way that Khan sort of melted before Mordor in the early stages is going to be what ultimately decides this fight, despite the fact there's still just about 20,000 frames remaining, which I find somewhat hard to believe. But I've been saying that for a little while now, and still the battle thunders on. These Serpent Bodyguard are trying their best to just sort of burrow their way out here, but it's not going to work. It's all over for them. How's this front line doing? Reasonably well. Although I still think that they're sort of... These Hashari Shadows, they still have ammunition. Can they even reach the Temple Guard, though, would be my question. I mean, they should be able to. The Hashari Shadows have got the longest possible range for an archer, I think. See the Brotherhood of the Lance in the background there. Yeah, that's this. We've got some Numenorean Shadow Guard coming down the hill. Oh dear. And it is in fact the Temple Guard who take the initiative and start firing their arrows, and the Hashari, I love them in melee, but at range they're they're not good. They fall apart to arrow fire so quickly. See, the balance of forces is actually evenly matched at this point. Now defeat is a distinct possibility. These Hashari shadows getting into melee. The Serpent bodyguards, unbelievably, with the general intact, managed to escape that hellhole. It was certainly not worth the trade, though. One temple guard for basically a whole unit of Serpent bodyguards, because the charges they're going to deliver are not going to be too significant now. And that might be it. The cavalry was honestly one of the things which could have saved them. A few charges into those Uruks could have really levelled the numbers out. But at this point, one unit of Brotherhood of the Lance. The Demons of the Desert are still alive. You can see that filtering down here, choosing to trade the high ground for a more solid position, but now here come the Melkors Chosen. The Melkors Chosen are on the way. Albeit very slowly. Again, one good charge from the Melkors Chosen could send the battle very easily in the other direction. So as we can see here again, it's not looking good. I still don't know how this is going to be all that close, to be honest with you, but there is a long way in the battle to go yet. So perhaps I am wrong. Would not be the first time. Temple Guard still firing down. Just look at this Mordor force though. Again, a lot of it is made up of sort of Uruks and lower tier units. But they're fresh Uruks. Actually, some of these are exhausted. What's going on here? Were they like charged up the hill or something? Well, some of these are fresh. Why are the Sauron's will exhausted then? How strange. Well, the Nurad assassins are all gone. Or are they? Yes, they are. These Uruks are sort of chasing down these Variag bowmen who are kiting them. Meanwhile, it would appear that Harad once more are retreating to try and sort of present a united front to the Mordor advance, which would explain why the battle goes on for so long. Yes, these Morgul Chosen. Defeat is almost a certainty. Facing off against Hashari, the Shadows variant. Again, the Morgul Chosen are a kind of a strange unit in my opinion. They are a multiple HP spear, and they will do a decent job, but I don't know, I've just never been a big fan of them. Meanwhile, we've got a unit of Brotherhood of the Sword over here. Some Variag bowmen, some Variag warriors. So we return to the battlefield where WK made his stand against the Misty Mountains and Isengard advance. And it looks like Stewed Balrog is going to be making his stand against the Mordor advance. This Melkor's Chosen is making it very difficult for them to group their forces up. And indeed, those Hashari are just getting mown down by those very heavy and reasonable maces. Very spiky indeed. Even the Caragors are kind of spiky. It's almost like something you would expect from Chaos. They are taking some arrow fire, but again, the Melkor's Chosen. If it's not AP arrow fire, they are not going to care one bit. Lots of HP, lots of armor, lots of defense as well, I think. Yeah, Khan need to sort of make their move now and run. Get into a united position with Harad. In fact, Harad, they are sort of running away. They're going to be quite a long way away, it looks like. They're going to try and sort of find a nice corner to sort of camp in, I would assume. So I think it might be for the best if I make another cut, to be honest with you. Because if you see where the Demons of the Desert are, that is clearly where they intend to move all of their forces. Well, I'll make a cut here, and if the battle starts before they all make it, then I will rejoin there. So, into the final 10,000 frames we are. Well, final 9,000 actually, really. And here, we can see that the aggression has started, with the Brotherhood of the Lance charging into these Moran Uruks, dealing a great amount of damage to them. Sort of a lot of individually very haggard units. We shall see if the Mordor forces have what it takes to really break the back of this Haradrim defence, which I think they probably will. I mean, the Melkor's Chosen should be able to shut down these Brotherhood of the Lance from charging into their advancing forces, which would be the only thorn in the side, because as you can see, we are in, unfortunately for me, the brightest section of the map. And actually, if I just Turn the brightness down a little bit for this. A little bit monochrome, but no, nonetheless, it is at least not too blinding anymore. We can see that the Harajam and the Khandish archers are going to be sort of trying to shoot the Melkor's Chosen. In my opinion, it's just a waste of time. The Melkor's Chosen are not going to take too much damage from that. You're much better off trying to finish off these Balrogs or the Olag High, simply because they are going to be used as a battering ram against the forces you have defending these choke points. And that's really what you need to use. I mean, the Demons of the Desert are going to be your ace in the hole. They could potentially be the thing to win you this battle. And again, I'm not too sure. I think that if we look at the percentage differences, it's still just a little bit too much in my opinion. And again, actually, let's have a look at the Mordor composition. So they got Moran on Uruks, a lot of sort of lower teams. They got the Oleg High and the lesser Balrogs, but those guys have got considerably less HP than they would have when they started the battle. The Balrogs have taken quite a few losses. The Temple Inquisitors, though, the Melkor's Chosen. There's the Temple Guard as well. They're not bad in melee. I don't know. You know, this is a lot of just basic units, and there are some decent units over here in the Harajam defense. But I still think what's ultimately going to finish them off is they don't have enough numbers to simply hold every position, and they're going to be engaged in melee on every front. Maybe I'm wrong though. Like I said, it wouldn't be the first time. Some Variag warriors, some Brotherhood of the Sword again. The Demons of the Desert, they don't have a lot of ammunition, which is the key thing. They need to throw it at the right target. And the right target is, of course, the Temple Inquisitors, because they have got nothing that will match them in melee. Here we have the Southron Warband and the dismounted Serpent Guard. Let's just speed this up a little bit, get them into melee a little bit quicker. Go on, Mordor. You can do it. Sending forward your men to die is exactly what you should be doing. Sauron demands it. Enough of this setting up nonsense. Here we go. Finally they seem to be moving forward. Oh, I missed the cavalry engagement because of course I did. That was a general. I think that was actually... Was that Mordor's general or was it Khan's? Actually, that's got to be Khan's. Khan's general was in the Brotherhood of the Lance, and of course they got perhaps a little bit too greedy. Again, all of the arrows are sort of being focused onto the Melkor's Chosen, and still they've only taken 3 losses. They really need to be taking care of some of the numbers that they're up against, because that's really what's going to kill them. Again, that's a much better target. Sauron's Will is an excellent target. The Temple Inquisitors, not a bad target either, but their armor and their hit points are going to make it so they're going to be very, very resilient to that sort of thing as well. The Sauron's Will is the sort of thing that I would definitely be going for. See the Variag warriors. We might actually get an advance at some point, as soon as the units have decided that the pathfinding is correct. Oh no, Khand is running away. You can't run away anymore, Khand. It's over. You need to accept your fate. Oh my word, come on. There's not much of this battle left. Now I'm actually concerned that one of the sides is going to collapse too quickly. And here we can see the Southern Pikemen. I mean, I think it's pretty clear that the attackers are probably going to win this at this point. Again, individual little units being sent forward like this basically to no avail. They can't afford to be wasting numbers at this point in the battle. The Demons of the Desert are idle, but they should definitely be getting some shots onto these Temple Inquisitors pretty soon. You know, now the Brotherhood of the Sword are being sent forward, as well as some Trollmen. So this line is actually going to hold pretty easily with the Trollmen, to be honest with you. That AP damage they do is pretty lethal. These Demons of the Desert need to be getting ready to throw their javelins into the Temple Inquisitors, because they are the only thing that can stop a unit like that at this point in the game. They're also not half bad in melee. They've also taken a few shots by the looks of things. Some of them are a little bloodied. Or is that just their war paint? It might just be their war paint, because they it's hard to say. You know, here they go. They are going for the Temple Inquisitors. So a single volley is enough to take out a pretty decent number of them. Stu Balrog knows exactly what unit to go for, which is good to see. Again, another lethal volley. So they are being sort of attacked on all sides. And at this point, I would say that the writing is kind of on the wall for the defenders. Defeat is almost a certainty. You can see just Balrog's being pushed forward. They just don't have enough men left to withstand the onslaught that Mordor is going to sort of bring unto them. And again, we're approaching the end. The final 5,000 frames. The Demons of the Desert have moved forward. I think they are actually out of ammunition. They don't have very many volleys at all. They are getting into the fight here. They will be enough to shut down these Balrogs, I would think. Demons of the Desert have more HP than their Trollmen brethren. And I think better melee stats even as well. Or it's very similar melee stats anyway. And this is a unit of Demons of the Desert with 70 in there, so a buffed unit size. Temple Inquisitors have sort of gone up to the cliff wall to make sure they can't just be shot to death. If we look over here, defeat seems certain. There simply isn't enough men left. And over here is where the main problem is. You can see that these Variag warriors just don't have the staying power to hold a line like this. They're doing their best, but ultimately the lack of HP is going to kill them here. HP is king in the game at the moment. That will be scaled back pretty significantly in the next patch, I hear. I think that hit points are going to become something that's much more rare, as opposed to now where they're pretty commonplace, to be honest with you. Battles are decided entirely by units that have hit points 99% of the time. Oh, speaking of which, the few remaining Serpent bodyguards are over there. The Balrogs have been beaten back, but ultimately there just isn't enough Trollmen left, I don't think. There's a few Moran on Uruks that are sort of slipping through the cracks. Still some Orc archers over there. Uruk halberds. It's only a matter of time before, as soon as one of these lines breaks, which is probably going to be the Variag one, the surrounding of the Southrons and the Nomads is going to happen, and then that'll be the end. A good map though, I really like this map. I like how so many different parts of it were used, and it didn't play out at all like I was expecting. I was expecting it to be just a sort of very simple layered defence going up the hill, but in the end I think particularly Stu Balrog deserves a lot of credit for the way this game turned out. His aggressive push down the hill in destroying Isengard and the Misty Mountains, with a bit of Khan's help, really turned this battle on a dime, because I think he would have been utterly crushed if he didn't do that. So, very good aggressive play, and it made the battle a lot closer than it otherwise would have been. Again, I do think that the initial defence from Khan was very poorly constructed, to be fair, because there were deployment zones, which leads me to believe that while they were sort of split up a little bit, sending individual units to their death too often ultimately led to what is now Mordor having way too many units for them to deal with. You can see these Variag warriors being ground down to a pulp. Sauron's will ready to move forward. And if we look over here, the Trollmen of Harad. Balance of forces is evenly matched. Fighting in tandem with the Brotherhood of the Sword. That's a pretty good unit synergy they've got going on there, but there are just too many Uruks for them to deal with here. Eventually they will be surrounded, of course. In fact, if we look over here, we can see that the Olag High have moved forward. These Demons of the Desert, defeat seems certain for them. Most unfortunate. But it seems like the attackers are going to win again. The attackers usually do win scenarios in which the defenders are outnumbered, it must be said. The defenders can afford very little in the way of mistakes, even in a very well balanced scenario. And I do think actually this one is very well balanced. I think that had Khan sort of constructed their lines a little bit better, this would have been much closer, and I think the defenders actually could have won this. Because Stu Balrog's Harad army was very elite. It had a lot of Hushari, had a lot of Trollmen, had the Demons of the Desert, had the Serpent Guard as well, and the Southron Pikemen to hold the lines. They had all of the tools they needed to really present a very nasty front to Mordor, but ultimately they were just overwhelmed. But yeah, I think this was a very good scenario, and it's really good to see people making their own scenarios like this. I mean, making their own maps, making their own army compositions, their rules. It's good because I think, you know, WK, Horton and Sin previously were the only ones I can think of which made scenarios regularly. Whereas now you've got people like Goddess Niemheim, you've got Froggy, presumably, he's going to make a few more, you've got Escal Nordia, you've got a lot of people are getting into map making, and I like that. It keeps the game fresh. And that's what we need, and with the new patch coming out soon, it's leading to a sort of a nice glut of new content, which is never a bad thing. The Temple Guard are moving forward, and hopefully after Christmas as well I will be able to start uploading a little bit more regularly as well, because obviously December, it's a very busy time for university, so I do apologise for that, and I do apologise. I do want to make my content a little bit better in terms of quality, so I do hope that that's going to be the case moving forwards. Can't wait for the new patch as well. But then again, no one can wait for the new patch. Things are looking good for that though. It's going to be sooner rather than later, it would appear. Finally the Variag Warriors have been destroyed. And this is going to be it. The beginning of the end. Arcturus's Mordor Moran Uruks are going to be the straw that breaks the camel's back here. Well, I guess less of a straw and more of the log that breaks the camel's back. What is that? I thought one of those Mordor units was routing then. Undisciplined orcs. You can actually see this very thin unit of Southern archers is being used as a buffer. Credit to Stewed Balrog for never giving up. I still need to fiddle with my settings to make the sand less luminous. I don't know why. In every other situation the graphic thing looks fine. But for some reason sand, it's like, nope. Sand needs to glow in the dark. It needs to be luminous. See that these Melkor's Chosen are going to move forward. Probably going to cause fear in the ranks of whatever is left. Although I don't know if the Trollmen can be broken too easily. I mean, they're eager most of the time. And in fact, the Melkor's Chosen actually make it through before the Moran Uruks do, which is quite amusing. But yeah, Mordor are going to have victory here today. The final 1,000 frames. It was closer than I thought it was going to be for a lot of that fight. As you can see, it's probably going to be about a 20% difference. But in the end, I do think that this scenario could be well balanced. There goes the Harad General. I think that if Khand is a little bit more organised, this scenario could be a lot closer. Because again, you've got to remember that Harad also had to basically surrender the advantage that these cliffs gave them in order to be aggressive. They were given very little choice in that regard. So players are starting to admit defeat here. As we move into the final 500, there goes Nolag High. We'll see out this battle, viewing the final stand of the Demons of the Desert, which isn't going to last long because they're going to be crushed underfoot by the Melkor's Chosen. And the Olag High, and a sea of Moran Uruks. And there we go. So yeah, I like that scenario. Very good indeed. And I don't know which scenario I'm going to be showing next, but I think it will probably be one that was made by Horton, the man himself as it were. Of course, links to the ModDB and to both Discords will be in the description below, as well as the round 2 link for the Mod of the Year Awards 2017. So yeah, I would definitely urge you to vote for Third Age Reforged, of course. It's definitely my Mod of the Year. And yeah, I'm sure that the developers would really appreciate some more votes as well. The more exposure the mod gets, the more players, and the more content that I can show you guys. So I'm also invested in making the mod get as much exposure as possible, of course. But yes, if we look here, the Mordor players, of course, getting a lot. I mean, the Isengard player getting quite a lot of kills as well. So getting some nice work done on WK's front line. Misty Mountains, less so, but even so, you have to say that... Excuse me. Looking at the Misty Mountains kills, I mean, this is Froggy's army, of course. The Mountain Uruk Archer's getting a decent amount. The Orc Bodyguard's doing very well as well, but if you look at the Blackwatch Legion, they were shut down more quickly than you would normally expect. And the Blackback Mountain Berserkers as well. Getting under 100 kills is something you don't usually see from them. Usually they are used as a crutch much more for the Misty Mountains. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you'll vote for this as your Mod of the Year. And I hope you'll join me for whatever is next.